Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry De Silva, and boy, have we've got a guest for you. Okie dokie, as she said to me recently. We have the lovely and talented Gloria Loring, actress, singer, author. My goodness, she has done so many things and is one of the busiest people that we know, and she will be talking to us a little bit about not only her career, people that she's worked with, and also talking a little bit about a book that she did a couple of years ago called Coincidence is God's Way of Remaining Anonymous, and that tells a lot about what she has kind of come to the realization and experienced, and a lot of good stories there as well. So we welcome to the show Ms. Gloria Loring. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, hello. It's so nice to see you, and I see you very clearly with my glasses on.
There you go. There you go. There, see, I have mine, but I don't know what I did with them. So, oh, here they are. So here, look. But then I can't read my notes, so I'll have to do like a.
No, you have to make a choice.
I'll do like a Walter Cronkite and do one of these. So. There you go. I have to mention this recently in doing my research for the program. I ran across actually a show that I used to watch back when I was in high school, and I said, wow, what a great thing to bring up to see if she remembers this. You know, it was a show called Celebrity Bowling with Jed Allen, who later you worked with. And I thought, wow, I said two things that come to mind. One were the pants that you wore were pants that were eerily similar to a pair of rainbow-colored pants I wore in high school, and I hate to say that I admit that I wore those, but I don't know. I probably was the only one that thought they were actually kind of nice. But on you, they looked very good. And do you even remember that show?
I remember that show for two reasons. They gave me my own bowling ball and bag. Nice. And that's the only reason I remember it. And I don't know, somewhere along the way, I donated it somewhere.
Wow. Well, I'll give you a quick trivia question before we get into more upper echelon credits in your career. You did 2 episodes. I believe if I read one time, they used to do a lot of them in the course of a weekend, okay, a Saturday and Sunday. Someone said at one point they actually did about 30 episodes in 2 days, which sounds crazy from Jed Allen's standpoint. And the pro bowler on the show with him was a Hall of Fame player named Dave Davis, I think it was. But anyway, the trivia question is this. Besides yourself, your partner on one of the episodes was a guy that was a member of the Rat Pack of sorts, a recording artist. And then you were playing against a gentleman that was best known for being on Bonanza and later a soap opera, and a former Miss America. Any recollection?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Your partner on the episode I saw was the great Trini Lopez.
Oh my gosh, I'm still occasionally in touch with him. I just, I've had a chance to say hello to him now and then, here and there.
Yeah, that was your partner. Not a bad bowler. He had some form. We won't discuss at least you got a bowling ball out of it, I'll say that. And then the other two was...
much as I got, tell
me. There you go. The other one was a gentleman that was nicknamed Candy on the Bonanza show, the late David Canary.
Oh, I know David.
Who was a fabulous bowler. He was really blowing you guys away. And the Miss America, who was just loving playing with this game, was Lee Merriweather.
Oh, sure. She's wonderful.
Yeah. So again, it's I just
star-studded cast.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I mean a Rat Packer, because Trini was tight with Frank and the boys, Gloria Loring, and then a former Miss America, and then a member of the iconic Bonanza show. I thought that was pretty.
That's my biography.
Yeah, there you go. That's a must see. Yeah, and then you worked with Jed Allen later on, didn't you?
Well, yes. Actually, when I was on Days of Our Lives, my character was married to Jed Allen's character, to Don Craig.
There you go. So not only did he host a bowling show that you did, which is not on top of her resume, I'm sure, but it was a cool show, really was. And you guys, you saw people on there that you never would think that you would ever.
People dig these things up. It's
amazing. Oh no, I used to watch that show as a kid, and I'm thinking either that or the Carol Burnett show that you did, I believe was in season 1, might have been the first time I ever saw you.
Shows.
Yeah. Oh, you did 3 with Carol. Wow. And was
Yeah,
one of
it was definitely 2, but I think it was 3. But anyway, whatever it was thrilling.
and wasn't one of them with Lucille Ball was the guest as well on that show?
She was on one of the shows I did, Lucille Ball. I was absolutely in awe. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. And at that point, you were like baby Snooks. You were all of like 4 or 5 years old. So I mean, it must have been a real thrill to be with young Carol. And
20 or 21.
you were
yeah.
20 or 21. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And she only looks 39 now. It's amazing, amazing. But no, that's cool. And I saw a little note that on one of your social media pages, you were in the Time Life thing that they've done on Carol, and Carol wrote you a nice note, and that was great. That seemed like a lovely lady from all I've heard.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah.
They interviewed some of us who were on the show in those early years, and she wrote me a handwritten note, which I still have, thanking me for the interview.
Another thing from the bowling too, I have to give this gentleman some props because I just think it's amazing. Gloria's husband for many years, I think probably has been together with him longer than anybody. Renee, and help me with Logler. Okay,
it's
the other
a very
one.
familiar Swiss name, but you're not Swiss, so
no, not at all. I love Swiss cheese, so that's about as close. Oh, there's a coincidence right there, but we'll talk more about that later. We have an image of one of Renee's works, and I was bowled over when I saw this. The gentleman has been nominated for 18 Emmy Awards. He's won 5. As an art director and art direction and production designer. 18 nominations, okay, 5 Emmy wins for this gentleman. And the image that we have is, I watch these every year, either the Memorial Day or the 4th of July things they do from Washington. And I mean, he's done countless other things, papal visits, Academy Emmy Award shows, specials.
He did the 84 Olympics in Los Angeles, opening and closing ceremonies. He's done a lot of great things. Good work.
Yeah, no, that's tremendous, tremendous. And then the other thing I read, and you have to tell me if this was true, that you, in another life, met him when you did the Glen Campbell show. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, we first met very briefly. Hi, Gloria. This is our art director, Renee Logler. Oh, hello. And this is our director. So it was like that quick. And that was in Glen Campbell, and that was 1970, January. And 23 and a half years later, Renee missed a plane for the first time in his life and wound up sitting next to me. And we started to talk. And a year later, we were married.
That's amazing. That's another one. I don't even know if that's in the book. I mean, that's another,
well, that's
very.
Chapter 12 of my book.
Only chapter 12. Renee deserves higher than that. My God.
Well, but it's a good summation of the way coincidence can lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because when he first met me in 1970, he remembers thinking to himself, that's the woman I'm supposed to be with. And 24 and a half years later, we met again.
Wow. And now you've been married going, over 2 decades, correct?
It'll be 25 years, the end of this year.
Wow. Congratulations. Oh, my goodness. That is tremendous. That's and then reacquainted on an airline flight. Wow. That's pretty good.
It's the only plane he ever missed. He never missed a plane other than that one flight and wound up sitting next to me. I love those
I can just hear this, and I'm not asking. I can just hear this if they ever have any discord at home, and I can just hear like in the little thing in the back of his mind, if I hadn't have missed that plane. But,
I hope not.
No. I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. Sorry, Renee. I didn't mean to get you in trouble. We can always edit that out. Now we have another shot of Gloria as a.
Be a rascal. That's okay.
Yes, we have another shot of Gloria as a child. My goodness, tell me about this. You were what? Born in New York City?
I was born in New York City. My family's all from Minnesota and North Dakota. My dad was a jazz musician. My mom was a singer before I was born. So there's a lot of family music. And I grew up with music in the house. My dad used to practice his trumpet at home, even though he became a salesman in order to get a real job and not have to be on the road, so he could be a dad and a husband. But yeah, a lot of music. We have 5 generations of music leading to Robin Thicke.
Wow. See, and I played the trumpet in Fred Chorn. So look at it. This is uncanny here. Okay. No. And yes, the mother of Robin Thicke. I know I wasn't going to go there because that's, it's almost like you've gone from this tremendous, star, singer, actress, author, all the things you've done. And now, how do you handle being called the mother of Robin Thicke?
I'm very proud of that. I like who my son is.
No, that's great.
There's some tough times, and he's a new dad. He's got a 1-year-old and another baby on the way, and he is with a wonderful lady. I'm really happy for them. And, life goes on.
Sure.
Things change.
Now, you wound up growing up in the Florida area. How did that transition? Was that when your dad kind of left the business or the music business?
No, actually what happened was we lived in New York City until 11. I went to PS 205 in Bayside. And when I was 11, we moved to Minneapolis. My dad was with National Cash Register and got transferred there. We lived there 3 years. I went to junior high school. Then he was transferred to Miami Beach to open up Miami Beach. He was a really good salesman. And I went down there and I went to Miami Beach High School and graduated and was voted most talented in my class and was up for school queen, princess, whatever that was, all of that stuff, and it was a very fun time. I have fond memories of Miami Beach.
From New York to the balmy Minneapolis, and then to the sunshine Gleason coast of Florida. That's great.
I only lived in Miami Beach for 5 years. I went to high school there for 3 years. Lived there 2 more years, and then I moved to Atlanta and then back to New York when I started doing the Merv Griffin Show.
There you go. Boy, you talk about leading me into my next question. Now, there was a gentleman that I guess knew you either in Atlanta or Miami that obviously knew of your singing talent, and then kind of helped get you on the Merv Griffin Show, even though there was some hesitation there until I guess Merv stepped in and decided, hey, I want to bring this girl and have her on my show.
Well, what happened was I went to London, and I was at the Playboy Club in London, and I did some shows there, some television shows, my very first. And then I flew back to New York, and I was jet-lagged, and I went and had a big pastrami sandwich at the Carnegie Deli. Dumb, young person thing to do before an audition, and went to sing my audition for the Merv Griffin Show, and was out of breath and stuffed tummy and scared to death. And they said, well, she's very lovely, but we don't think so. And my agent then, well, what was his name? Oh, that's so long ago. He called Merv personally. He was an old friend of Merv's and said, you got to trust me. You got to put this girl on. And because of that, I was booked on the Merv Griffin Show. And came on and caused a bit of a sensation. I think I was better than they expected, and I got a contract to do 26 Merv Griffin shows in the first year.
Now that was that during the Metro Media days when Merv was out of New York, correct? That wasn't when he went
he was right next door to Sardi's.
Yeah, and I used to watch those as a kid, and of course I haven't had a chance to ask. I'm sorry.
With Arthur Treacher.
I was just going to say, this is uncanny. I was going to say, you're the only one that I've been able to ask, what was Arthur Treacher like? They said he was a lovely man.
He was a gentleman.
Yeah.
He was a very kind gentleman and very gracious, and that's about all I remember, because, I was a 20-something. I didn't have much reason to talk to him, except to say, hello, Mr. Treacher, and that was about it.
He was, for those who don't remember, he was kind of like the Ed McMahon of Merv Griffin. And then later on, I guess through some business dealing, long gone, there used to be a series of restaurants, at least here in the East Coast, I'm not sure if it was nationwide, called Arthur Treacher's, and they were actually named after him. I guess he helped, found them or whatever. But anyway, he was kind of a British actor that somehow transitioned into being Merv's sidekick on this program. And he even went with him to CBS, but then as he got older, he decided to kind of hang it up there, and then Merv kind of went solo by himself. But yeah, he was a whenever he spoke, he always said something either humorous or very kind of poignant. Otherwise.
Well, everything's funnier with an English accent, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And Arthur was very good at that.
Indeed, and so you wound up doing several of those programs, which helped get you obviously noticed throughout the country, for sure.
Well, when you're on a major show like that every 2 weeks for a year, people start to notice. And there was a lot of buzz. You know, I was the new girl in town sort of thing, and I sang well, and I looked pretty. And, you know, so I got invited to do the Carol Burnett show, and I did, I think it was three Carol Burnett shows. Or maybe it was 2 the first season and 1 the second season. And then I did the, I did the Dean Martin show. I did
Ed Sullivan, yeah.
Yeah, I did all those shows. I was the variety show princess, you know.
Did you ever do the Hollywood Palace?
Yes, I think I did.
There you go.
So.
Yeah, I thought.
It's hard to remember. There are probably, 500 shows that I did. So, and that was before I joined Days of Our Lives and did 1,000 shows on there in 7 years.
Yeah, no, I know you did Mike Douglas and later on Carson and whatever. But but those variety shows, as Carol Burnett has said, they just don't have the willingness or the capacity to even try to do those, shows now. She was talking recently about Bob Mackie, who was their well-known fashion designer. He would create like 60 costumes for a show. So if you did that show 2 or 3 times, I can just imagine the amount of costume changes that went on. And of course, that all translates to money and et cetera. But it's great that folks can watch you in those. And what was Sullivan like?
Well, I have a coincidental story about Ed Sullivan. I was 17 years old, and I was living in Bay Harbor, I think it was called, and I got off the school bus, and on the way home, there was a place called the Jockey Club, and a lot of celebrities went there, and I somehow, and I don't remember, had the nerve to say to the doorman, I'm a singer, and I'm gonna be on some of these shows someday. And he said, well, he said, this Friday night, Ed Sullivan is coming for dinner. Why don't he? I think he has a 6:30 reservation. Why don't you show up and say hello to him? So I was there with my little picture and my little resume, what could my resume have? It was 17. I don't even know. But anyway, I was there with my little picture, and Mr. Sullivan got out of the car with his wife, and I said, Mr. Sullivan, my name is Gloria Jean Goff, which was my given name, Gloria Jean Goff, and I'm going to be on your show someday. And he said, well, that's very nice. And I said, here's my picture. And he said, you know what? I don't want to take this to dinner because I could lose it. He said, why don't you have it sent over to the Fontainebleau Hotel? And I actually had my dad take me to the Fontainebleau Hotel, and I left it at the front desk for Ed Sullivan. 4 years later, I was on the Ed Sullivan Show.
That's great, yeah. That's
Isn't that amazing?
That is great. I looked that up. I think the only guest that I recall, comedian Jack Carter, I think was on the same appearance you were at, and something about, I think he introduced Anne Margaret from the audience, but again, the different musical acts that I've read about or heard talk about doing that show, there used to be a lot of dress rehearsals. So do you remember like having to be there like for a couple of days, or you just like showed up and?
No, you came in. From what I remember, it was a one-day thing, I think it was just a one day because I had one song. That's all I did. I did one song, and I can even remember what it was. It was a little like a little medley of "I'm Gonna Make You Love Me" and one other song, but. I remember the dress I wore. It was silver with gold thread in it, and had a swirly chiffon skirt. And
that she remembers. The pants from Celebrity Bowling she doesn't remember, but the chiffon dress. There you go. That's
Ed Sullivan appearance you remember.
And Dean Martin. So I didn't even know about Dean Martin. That's that you did his show as well. So
I did 3 or 4 Dean Martin shows. Yeah.
That's tremendous. And another thing, too, I have to mention, because I've seen some pretty excitable people on TV, but this lady over the years, one of the more recent ones, I think, was you did that show, You're Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, which was pretty cool.
Oh, my God, that was so exciting.
Didn't you raise you won like close to $1 million, which you were playing for charity?
No. Thank you for the hyperbole, but no. No, I won. If you answer 10 questions, you win $25,000.
Oh, 25.
You get one more question, that you can choose to answer or not. If you answer it correctly, you get $250,000. But if you answer it incorrectly, you lose the $25,000. But the fun part of it is when they called me to do it, I thought, okay, what, fifth grader? What would trip me up? And I thought, fifth grade math. So I went online and got a fifth grade math tutorial, and it was all about fractions and how to multiply fractions. And I sat and I did about 40 minutes of multiplying fractions. And my trick question on Smarter Than a Fifth Grader was 30% of 40% is the same as 20% of what percent? And I said, do I get a pencil and paper? He said, no, you have to do it in your head. And now the fun part is my manager was standing at the booth, where all the director and camera shots are.
Right.
And she saw one of the guys turn to the other, and he went, well, she'd done pretty well until now. And then I said, okay, 20%. So 3 times 4 is 12. 20% is 1/5. So that would be 5 times 12 would be 60. So it'd be 20% of 60%. He said, are you sure? And I said, yes. 12 is 1/5, 20%, 60%. And they said, you're correct.
Wow.
And the one producer turned to the other and said, I booked her.
Yeah. Now he's taking credit. No, that's great. That was like one of the more recent ones, but I saw some clips. You were like probably the most enthusiastic celebrity when it comes to your average, man or woman in the street. There was one in particular, which I don't expect you to remember. There was a gentleman on Super Password, and I think it was with Bert Convy. Alan Ludden had already passed. And he won, and honest to God, you reacted like as if you had won $1 million, and I'm just like, and then I just kept seeing this over and over again, that you really not only competitive, but you also just really relish, again, helping people win money like that.
You know what? I love the idea of winning. When I was a kid, I was the world's worst loser. I used to play canasta with my cousins, and if I lost, you could see the smoke coming out of my ears. I'd pout, and I was terrible. I was just awful. So fortunately, I've gotten over that.
Oh my goodness! Don't play poor Renee if he plays cards with Gloria. Look out!
No, I'm not like that anymore.
No,
but I think it's that drive to be noticed and to be important and to be right and to be, successful that helped me achieve what I achieved along the way. I wanted to be noticed.
Well, I was going to say, to have the chutzpah to go up to Ed Sullivan after getting a tip from a waiter or whatever, or a person at the front of the doorman. That's, I would say right away that, that popped into my head.
At 17, I still can't believe I did that, but that's great. I love that.
That's good. Good inspiration for people. Gloria Loring, singer, actress, author, woman about town there. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. The book, we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes. Right now, kind of going over highlights of her career, some that she may not think are highlights, but I think they're terrific. Cary Grant, now here's another one. Tell me about you and your then husband, Alan Thicke, running into Cary Grant. We have a photo of you, the three of you, Cary Grant.
It must have been at some awards show or something, because it was literally a stop. Can we get a picture with you? It wasn't, he was so gracious. And that's all I remember about that.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't sit down and have dinner together or anything.
Oh, okay. No, I thought you guys were pals, because again, that's another Hollywood yesteryear. I mean, that's, you don't find too many people who cross paths with Cary Grant.
I wasn't quite in his era, so I didn't think we had that much in common. But yeah, along the way, you get a chance to meet some extraordinary people. And sometimes I remember when I met Jimmy Stewart, and I don't remember where it was, but it was some event. And he and I were two of the celebrities there, and I very nervously went up to him and just wanted to say something. And I stuttered and stammered and said, Mr. Stewart, I just have to let you know that I just love everything you have ever done, and thank you for being who you are, or something like that, something generic like that. And he was so gracious, and I felt so inadequate to the moment because it was Jimmy Stewart, you know.
It's a wonderful life, let me tell you, among so many others. Now, I have a thing, and I don't know if it kind of ties in with the book, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but I always say to people, and they probably look at me like I'm crazy, but I always say that I'm a big believer as a fan of that film and kind of what it inspired in me. Inspired may not be the right word, but that, you know, I call them like my It's a Wonderful Life moments. Like, you know, if this didn't happen, well, guess what? Then my life would have been altered in this way. Or if this good thing or mediocre thing, or in some cases bad thing happened, you know, if it didn't, then it would have changed. Like I always say, and I get points for this. Well, you know, if I hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have met, you know, my wife, my second redhead, you know, but I tossed that in for good measure. But anyway, but it's the truth. And you know, so it kind of, I think, reminds me a little bit about like your book in a sense, but that's kind of how I live my life, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, I don't have a lot of regrets because, you know, if you go and change one little thing, like I used to say, oh, yeah, 30 years ago, I didn't get that radio job. Well, if I had, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you because I would have gone in a different direction totally, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. We can all look at those moments in our life and say, you know, if I just had done this a little differently, who knows where I would have been. And we can't know what life would have been like, would have, should have, could have, you know.
Exactly. Real quick before we switch gears, acting and singing influences growing up or in your...
Growing up, Ella Fitzgerald and Peggy Lee.
Wow.
My dad was a jazz musician and used to bring home actual reel-to-reel tapes. And the first albums I ever owned, I think my dad gave them to me, was Ella Fitzgerald sings Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart, sings Rodgers and Hart. And then Ella sings Harold Arlen. And then I listened to Peggy Lee. And then there were a couple of others, but those were the two main ones.
And then the two things real quick. One was, and this was, I actually got this first one, I'm not sure about the second one from, it was a marvelous gentleman named Skip E. Lowe that used to have a, excuse me, a syndicated talk show. And some 25 plus years ago, you did his show out of California. And it was a lot of interesting stuff that came out of that interview, I thought. But you gave credit to an actress that many folks know by the name of Valerie Harper as far as helping you when you were trying to kind of become an actress, or what you felt you needed to become an actress.
Well, Valerie helped me by being Valerie, and Valerie is the most positive human being you could ever possibly meet. And I had a little role in a little movie that my husband was doing, and I was to play a newscaster. And I was trying to figure out, you know, how to position myself and how to have that whole newscaster thing. And Valerie, and I said, this is a little nerve-wracking trying to be an actress. And she said, no, you're not trying to be an actress. You are an actress. All you have to do is sit down and show up and deliver the lines. You are an actress. And hearing that, I mean, that was Valerie Harper, you know, telling me that she had faith in me. And she's just an extraordinary person. And for a while, she was at the house. Sometimes we went to lunch. We had, you know, that proximity for a while that bred a very nice friendship. And a couple times over the years, I've been in touch with her.
Very good, very good. All right, switching gears, talk about Gloria's book, again, that came out a few years ago, Coincidence is God's Way of Remaining Anonymous. We have a photo of the book, and just you know, a marvelous book indeed. And her book talks about, or details a series of extraordinary coincidences that transformed Gloria's life. And also in the book, she offers perspective insights on how each of us can use coincidence for our own good and the good of those we love. So what made you sit down and say, I mean, you had written some other books, Days of Our Life cookbooks, and to raise money for diabetes that you were, and I'm sure still are, very passionate about for many reasons. You had done a children's book, but what motivated you to put this book together when you did?
Well, I saw that over a period of years, I had this extraordinary list of, to me, extraordinary, of coincidences. And at one point, I was telling one of the coincidences to a person like yourself, an interviewer. And it was a little card that said, "Expect a miracle," that showed up in my dressing room before I met the man that helped me raise $1 million for diabetes research. And I said to him, this interviewer, "Isn't that an amazing coincidence that 24 hours before I met this man, a card would mysteriously appear in my dressing room that said, 'Expect a miracle'?" And he said, "Well, yes, but you know that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous." And I stopped and I said, whoa, wait a minute. Tell me that again. I got to write that down. Coincidence is what? God's way of what? Remaining anonymous? I said, what does that mean? But that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And it stayed with me. And of course, you know, if you hear something cool, you should use it for your interviews. So when I told the story of how I'd raised the $1 million for diabetes research, I would button that with, and, you know, it was an amazing coincidence. And of course, you know, coincidences, you know, I sounded like I knew what I was talking about. And it stayed with me. And I started to view my life and what happened to me through the lens of coincidence, and how there would be meaningful coincidings that were good for me, that would help me, that would inform my life in new ways. And as I had a whole list of these, I realized that that was a book, if I could have the courage to write it. It took me over 10 years to write it. It took me 15 years to think about it, and then took me 10 years to write it.
Wow.
But
see, we already know you have the courage because you've done all those other things where you did things that other people would just like totally shy away from. So you really are courageous.
Possibly. But you know, coincidence is the fact that God was in the title sounded like it was going to be some kind of a religious book, and it's not a religious book. It is a worldview book. You don't have to have a religion to understand that there is a power of connection in this universe that is in our lives, that connects us to what we need and what we may not understand that we want in order for us to grow to the next level. So I just knew that if I could ever get this done, that it might be something really good for me. So I started on this long, long journey of reading every book I could find about synchronicity, coincidence. Physicist David Bohm, you know, the physicist David Bohm, who said everything is connected to everything else. And I started to read about the great saints and the great teachers, spiritual teachers from different traditions, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Sufis, the Catholics, the Thomas Mertons, the Rumi, the Sufi Thomas Rumi. You know, just all of this. And everywhere I looked, it was like coincidence, coinciding. Everywhere I looked, I saw wonderful evidence for the fact that we are connected to so much that is good for us, that will promote growth in our lives.
But now, the coincidences that you talk about in the book, I mean, I get there's a certain stream that kind of, you know, connects each other. I'll give you one that, honest to God, happened to me today, but it's not what I would call an inspiring coincidence. And I don't now that I've kind of, you know, learned about the book, I'm thinking, well, okay, what does it mean? I'm at work today, and all of a sudden I'm telling a coworker, just during some idle chit-chat while we're waiting for something, and all of a sudden we were talking music, and we were talking about a song, the theme from Ghostbusters, okay? A guy named Ray Parker Jr. wrote the song for the movie, mid-'80s, and how there was like a suit because someone else claimed that the melody was plagiarized, et cetera, et cetera. I kid you not 5 minutes later, I go back to where I work, and all of a sudden on the radio, as part of a commercial for a retail firm, is the retail ad with a guy doing these like kind of bogus lyrics touting the service, and what's the bed of music underneath? Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. But it's a coincidence, but it means nothing.
Well, again, you're the one who decides if it has meaning for you. And what I say is, when my sister said a very interesting thing. I was finishing writing the book when my sister was dying of cancer. And she said to me, but what about those things that come into our lives that are so difficult? And I said, how can that be good for us? And I said, it's not a matter of good or bad necessarily, but maybe an event that comes into our lives, a circumstance, a process, maybe asking something of us. Maybe it's to become more patient. Maybe it's to become more loving. Everything can be handled for our own growth, can be approached for our own growth. Now, hearing the song Ghostbusters doesn't help you grow in any way, as a person, as a spirit, etc.
It perked me up, but that's about it.
Well, there might be an illness that comes along, or a car accident, and out of it we learn patience, or we learn empathy. Maybe we always look down on people who had a disability, and now we've got a disability, and we need to go, oh, I need to fix that in myself. You never know what good may come. Anything is capable of becoming good.
No,
depending on how we use it.
Yeah. Oh, indeed, indeed. I just have to find coincidences that kind of really make an impact. And I'm sure if I think about it, but it's amazing the ones that you talk about. I'll give the audience a sample. You talked about one where you were provided letters from God, and then shortly after that you had your hit record, the well-known Friends and Lovers that Gloria recorded with the late Carl Anderson back in the mid-'80s. An experience of divine presence. Healings of secret wounds from your past, issues that you had encountered as a child. There was other ones where you left Days of Our Lives. Your marriage was literally coming to an end. I mean, these are some pretty heavy things that were going on, during that whatever stream or whatever you want to call it.
Well, there are opportunities that come into our life to move to the next circumstance, next relationship, etc. We've all had these things happen. If we look back, who is it that said, sometimes looking back over your life, and I'm paraphrasing, is like looking at a well-written novel with lots of surprise people coming into it, that idea. You just cited a number of chapters that each is a full complement of story in itself. But you just never know when, and I've had to remind myself sometimes when I get stuck and I think, how am I going to do this and what could happen? And, oh, it'll never work. And I think, but Gloria, how many times have you said that? And the right person showed up, the right circumstance showed up, the money showed up, the inspiration showed up, the friendships showed up. You just never know when things will work out well. Right,
and throughout this whole thing, obviously, I saw that, and I think you would agree, many people would just, fold up or crawl into like a ball. In other words, you are a survivor in many ways, but then again, you've done what a lot of other people have done, which is, sometimes you just got to dust yourself off, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, all those familiar sayings, and just keep moving forward, which is kind of my way of life, is just no matter, I've been through divorce and other things in my life, and you just, I try not to look back. And then hopefully, as you're saying, try to find a little opening of light or something, and then, as you said, something else comes along. But
I think a good question always when something difficult comes it's a very simple thing to say, what is this asking of me? And it may be going through a divorce. It may be asking forgiveness of the person that you married who didn't turn out to be what you expected, and maybe you who didn't turn out to be what you expected. Maybe you thought you were a really terrific person and you've acted in ways that are not exactly terrific. And, so maybe forgiveness, maybe patience, maybe compassion, maybe love, maybe kindness. There's always an opportunity to step into a greater sense of self.
I think I better lay on the desk here and go for a therapy session right now, because this is all hitting hard to me. But no, it is. I mean, it's. I think anybody who has. I'm sorry.
But bottom line, what is it asking of you? And you're the one who best decides.
That's right.
Sometimes a therapist can help lead you there, but you're the one who best decides and very often it's what you least want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to forgive. I want to be angry.
Now,
I had a circumstance with someone who borrowed money from me, and there was an agreement, and there was written out the terms. And when the time came, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I got like an email message or something. I can't deal with it. And I was so angry, and 2 years went by, and I was angry and angry and angry, and I thought about this person all the time, and I was angry. And then finally one day I said, this anger is eating me up. I have to let this go. And I finally decided that I was going to pretend that there was a big scissors cutting a cord between the two of us. The very next day, that person called me to apologize. I forgave and forgot and let go, and that person called me to apologize and said, I'm so sorry for the way I have handled this. I realized, the next day. How is that possible?
I know.
It's because, as David Bohm, the physicist, said, we're all connected. At some level, we are all connected. And maybe what I do by forgiving or letting go of something helps someone else heal. You never know what good may come.
Actress, singer, author Gloria Loring, who's taught me that I need a real big pair of scissors. I can tell you that right now. I can tell you that right now. I need those kind that are like very sharp. You barely have to touch it and it's cutting. Oh my goodness. Anyway, enough about me. Back to Gloria. Tell me a little about the 4 I's: inspiration, intention, inventory, and investment. Give me some kind of.
Well, that was when I took a look at how I raised $1 million for diabetes research. I had a friend who had those little codes for herself. I think she had the 4 T's or whatever it was, and I thought, let me see if I can do that with my process in raising $1 million for diabetes research. And I realized that I had an inspiration. I wanted to do something to help answer my son's question: when is my diabetes? When are my shots going to be over? And then the intention, I said, you know what, I'm going to create a fundraising project. And then it went on, and tell me the third one again.
The inspiration, intention, inventory, and investment.
And I took a look. Inventory is taking a look at what you currently have in your life and who you know, because you never know that you're not two conversations away from exactly what you want. And the last is investment. I began to put the book together as if it was a foregone conclusion that it would be successful. And it was only, even though I had no money, I got to the point where the book was all ready, and that's when the card Expect a Miracle came into my life, and I met the man who gave me $10,000 to help underwrite the book that we raised $1 million from. So that's a process that you can use for yourself and say how I'm inspired. What is it I want to do? What's my intention? I want to create this. What's my I keep forgetting that one. Inventory.
Oh, the inventory. Yeah.
I call. And the last one is invest your time and energy making your dream come true.
There you go. Oh my goodness. Now, this one was really kind of shook me a little bit, because it was like, wow, this is. I can't wait to hear the answer here. During the phase in the mid to 80s, when you and your late first husband Alan Thicke were getting divorced, you started to receive a steady stream of these, quote, letters from God. Kind of fill us in on what was that all about?
Well, I was very well known for working for a Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation because of my son's diabetes. And there was a woman who had a daughter who had, I think it was epilepsy, I'm trying to remember now, got seizures. And she wrote me a letter that was the kindest, most compassionate. I mean, I sobbed when I got this letter. She said, I will help you carry your burden. You are no longer alone in the world. And there were times I felt so alone, which was just my own thing. I wasn't alone, but I thought I was. And we met. She came to see me at one of my book signings for the Days of Our Lives Celebrity Cookbook. And she gave me this letter, and we shook hands, and I wrote her a thank you. And then she proceeded to send me a letter saying she had been instructed to send me these messages. She prayed every day, and she often prayed for me, and they were letters from God. And little did anyone know about my personal life, because I had not told anyone, but I was contemplating asking for my husband Alan Thicke for a divorce. And of course I was going through all of the wrenching separation concepts and breaking up the family, but I just couldn't stay in that marriage. I couldn't learn to be myself in that marriage. Mm-hmm. There had been a dynamic set up where he knew everything and I knew nothing, and I thought I knew nothing, and it just exacerbated the problem. And so these letters from God started coming, and they would always start out, my dear daughter, you are not alone. I have you. I will lift you up. I will this. I still have all of them. I have every single one of them. They were the most inspiring missives I could ever imagine receiving. And this lady's name is Shirley Lemke, and she lives in Missouri or Iowa now. Where is she? Nebraska.
I believe, yeah, Nebraska, yeah.
Yeah, Nebraska. And the letters continued for 2 years, exactly the period of time when I first decided to divorce Alan until the divorce became final. The last letter arrived. And I asked her years later, why did you stop sending me those letters? She said, it just seemed like what was needed by you had been accomplished. Now, here's the fun part. We have a couple more minutes?
Yes.
Shirley was driving to her Tuesday night prayer group. And she said as she was driving, she felt like she moved out of her present consciousness and moved into another dimension. And a voice said to her, you must tell Gloria that I love her. And she said to this voice, I don't know anyone named Gloria except that actress on Days of Our Lives. And how in the world would I find her? And that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. She starts arguing with this inner voice that comes up to her. And the voice said, wait and see. And she goes to her prayer group that night. And during their time at the end, when they're having a quiet time, one of the ladies is prompted to say, I don't know why, but I feel inclined to tell you that I read in the paper that Gloria Loring is going to be at the mall this weekend signing her new book.
Wow.
And Shirley showed up with the letter for me. The letters from God started to pour in my direction and changed my life. I didn't know I wasn't alone in this life. I didn't know that there was an inner voice and an outer presence that could help me through anything that I had ever been through. And it was just extraordinary. It was an extraordinary time in my life. And as I said, I still have all those letters.
Excellent. I was going to say, obviously, what you described in terms of when people are in marriages, sometimes, there's certainly needs to be a lot of give and take, whatever. But you talked about how sometimes people are willing to or forced to become like almost submissive or subservient to the other. Did you find that as a result of that, and actually, I want to bring it up quick, we actually have a photo of when Alan and Gloria got married. At first I thought it was like a prom picture, but it's actually, that tuxedo is to be, I thought my prom outfit was bad, okay? So we got that up, we have that. That is a, yeah, oh, I'll tell you, that's a good looking photo.
Toronto in 1970.
1970, yeah, I'm telling you. I don't know.
We're so young.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. And then there was another one. I don't think I have it here. I'm telling you, I was like, it was you, and he was wearing one of those kind of like, pre-Carson, like, shirts and polyester pants, and you're just there. You're like all legs. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, and I just thought this guy really hit the jackpot with this lady, Honest to God. Honest to God.
I think he eventually knew that.
Yeah, and then it's good. And I say this because, again, I need that large pair of scissors. You maintained a good relationship, and again, I'm sharing too much of my own experiences, but there was a time where after you got divorced where he remembered something or remembered an anniversary or an occasion, and I guess, contacted you or sent you a letter and stuff, and I thought,
sent me a card.
Yeah, card, yeah. And I thought that was pretty good.
It was for my birthday, and it was several years after we divorced. And he, in the card, God bless him, he apologized. And he said, I'm sorry, you only brought goodness into my life, and I'm sorry for anything I ever did that hurt you in any way. And I just sat and sobbed my heart. I think it was my 50th birthday, and I sat and sobbed my heart out of gratitude that could be accomplished in this lifetime.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, I mean, there you can go on, Gloria has a Twitter page, Facebook, again, www.glorialoring.com for all the stuff that she's up to or, has done, et cetera, et cetera. But again, these folks, up until he passed away a couple of years ago, I mean, they're having Thanksgiving dinners. I mean, you'd need a very, very large hammer and sickle to get me to do anything like that. I mean, God bless you. He really, the two of you, I have nothing but admiration for you guys.
For my sons, I had to do that. I mean, it was difficult in the first years. But gradually, as I got remarried, as he got remarried, And Robin always had the big parties at his house. So we would all just gather, and it would be, hi, Alan. Hi, Gloria. Hi, Gloria. You know. My favorite Alan story. I have to tell you my
Go ahead.
favorite Alan
5
story.
minutes, so go ahead.
Okay.
Make it quick.
My grandson is turning like 4, and he's having his birthday party. His monster trucks and Tangled, Rapunzel.
Yes.
Rapunzel and monster trucks. So they get a lady to come with the Rapunzel braids, and she comes in the room in her outfit, her long dress with the long braids, and we're all saying, and Tyler is there, he's 4, you know, we say, oh, hi, Rapunzel, you know, we're playing along, and Alan goes, hi, Rapunzel.
Oh my goodness, my goodness. Here's another thing.
To do.
Before we throw it to a number we had of Gloria singing, doing what she does best, there was a thing last clip that I think last show Alan may have done, which I don't know if you know. He was on the 1st or 2nd season of Fuller House, the Full House reboot. But get this. There's a clip where he comes to the door. I don't know what the character he was playing. Candace Cameron Bure opens the door, and then I'm watching the clip, and then it hits me. How bizarre is that? His son on his growing pains was her brother, is her brother. I just thought that's
yes.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't know whether that was the reason why he got the gig. You know, I just thought it was great.
No, he got the gig because he's Alan Thicke.
No, I know that, but I just thought how ironic was that, you know, that and actually I could even take it further. In the original Full House, Kurt Cameron in season 1 also did a guest shot playing the cousin of his real-life sister, but that's for another.
You know much more than I do about
Like I told Mother Dolores Hart when she was here, the former actress, I'm great at cocktail parties. I'm a wealth of useless information and idiosyncrasies, as my lovely wife, my second wife, not the one that I need the scissors for.
The second redhead.
Yeah, second redhead. Yeah, my Achilles heel, second redhead. I found out in my 40s I'm dating faux redheads, wannabe redheads, and so now I know. Walk on the other.
You might as well stick with the one you got.
Yes. Exactly. Gloria, we can't say enough. We want to have you back. She's got working on a new CD. We're gonna nag her to death to get that out, and then we want to have her back on the show. Hang in there. I can't thank you enough for taking time. Say hello to the dog for me. Bring him on next time. Gloria and I are going to continue chatting. Meanwhile, we have a lovely montage of Gloria and maybe even those wedding photos. A song she co-wrote with her late husband, Alan Thicke. The theme from The Facts of Life. So we thank you for joining us here on Studio 411. Larry DeSilva is my name. Enjoy the clip, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.
You take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. There's a time you gotta go and show you're growing. Now you know about the facts of life. The facts of life. When the world never seems to be living up to your dreams, then suddenly you're finding out the facts of life are all about you. When there's someone that you care about, it really isn't fair. They're out to slow you up when you're growing up. When you let them flirt and then you hurt away because your date is late showing up. Then you're growing up. When it's more than just the birds and the bees, you need someone telling you please. There's only one conclusion, there will always be confusion over you. It takes a lot to get 'em right when you're learning the facts of life. You'll avoid a lot of damage and